Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
the
FAIRtax Guys. You forgot your scrolling banner, and I brought my cue.
We have it red on the top, right?
Yes, there you go. And I haven't got.
I don't know where you got that giant Rubik's Cube. How? I know you're big on doing that. I mean,
yeah, I got it off eBay, actually. It's 11 by 11. It takes over an hour to solve. It's not any harder as far as degree of difficulty goes. The same solution algorithm to solve this one as all the other size ones. This just takes longer because there's a lot more pieces to put back in place. And I may bring that to CPAC and that. Oh, and speaking of CPAC,
yes,
we have been speaking kind of off and on for the past several months about the FAIRtax 500, wanting to get 500 FAIRtax volunteers to show up at the next CPAC. And we've been saying all along, well, we don't know if it's going to be in Florida or DC. Well, now we know. They just announced it a couple of days ago. CPAC 2022 will again be back in Orlando, Florida. They have not announced a specific venue yet. I imagine it's going to be different from last year, but they have not announced a specific venue, but it is Orlando, Florida, and the dates are February 24 through 27. That's a Thursday through Sunday. So now we need as many people as possible. Now that they know where and when exactly it is, we need as many FAIRtax people as possible showing up at CPAC this time.
Absolutely. And of course, Florida in February. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in Florida?
I don't know.
Maybe the dead of winter everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, it is. I say we got a couple of FAIRtax Candidate Pledge signers from way out where it's cold. I'm thinking Marissa Selvig in Wyoming. It's rather cold in Wyoming in February, and Jared Sessler in Washington. I tell you what, if we can get some of them to come to CPAC, maybe we can do another interview with them. But speaking of interviews, you have your round two of your FAIRtax Candidate Pledge interviews.
Yes, we'll be talking about young Mike Saliba, who is in Michigan, District 9. Here in just a few minutes. Do you want to go over the list first, or do you want to see?
Yeah, let's go ahead and give some love and some recognition to all of the candidates. And it's really fun. Over the past several weeks, it seems like every other program we've done here has been a candidate interview. So if it's this early in the election cycle and people are showing interest in signing the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge, I mean, we'll talk to as many of them as we'll sign it. But let's just go ahead and go down the list and recognize those who have done it already.
In April of this year, Alex Stovall signed from Arizona District 9.
Young man, I think keyword young, and he's taking the FAIRtax message primarily into the inner cities where a lot of people have never heard of the FAIRtax before. And people like that are on the lower end of the economic scale are the ones that are going to benefit the most. You walk in there, right. Alex goes in there and tells them, hey, you can bring home your whole paycheck and you'll get a tax refund every month. That has to sound good to anybody, but especially someone who's struggling to make ends meet.
That's right. And that's the thing about the FAIRtax. It's a great normalizer, and a lot of people don't realize how beneficial it'll be to those on the lower end of the spectrum. And especially right now with inflation on the rise, and it looks like it's going to be with us for a while, upwards of 6% now, from what we've heard in the reports over the last week or so. Your dollar doesn't go quite as far as it used to in a number of different places.
Okay, we need to scoot on through the list here to have time for your interview. Alan Waters is next. These are alphabetized by first name, by the way. And Alan Waters, his claim to fame is always going to be that he's the guy that saw me and Ron Malero walking around the vendor area in CPAC last year and hollered out, "Hey, FAIRtax guys," at us. So he is well versed in the FAIRtax, very articulate. He's running in a deep blue state. He's in Rhode Island, District 1. But a lot of people up there, again, are hurting. They've had some pretty drastic COVID shutdowns, and people have lost their jobs, lost their businesses. So again, the same message that appeals to the inner city should appeal to the people who are struggling for other reasons. And Alan Waters is a really good guy to carry that message.
Absolutely. Texas District 8 is Dan McCaughan. He signed back in August. I'm sure that was our buddy down there that saw that happening. The fellow that's running Gaver, what's his name?
Yeah, that's part of the John Gaver project. He's going to try to get as many of the Texas 8 candidates on the FAIRtax Pledge as he can. Again, that's the seat that Kevin Brady is retiring from. Right. There is a large field of candidates running to replace him, and Gaver's going to try to get as many on there as he can. So thanks.
Absolutely. That
And
is great.
absolutely. Next one of this is Jared Sessler. He's one of the ones that we talked to in Las Vegas as well. He was saw our presentation, was impressed with it to the point that he signed the pledge right then and there. We gave him a copy of the FAIRtax book, and he read it on the flight back home to Washington from Las Vegas. And by the time we interviewed him a few weeks later, he was dead out sold on this. And the thing I really enjoyed about talking to Jared, he's a former NASCAR driver. So
well, there you go. Hey,
not on one of the national touring series, one of the regional series up there,
right.
but
well, those Saturday night race drivers, they really are the heartbeat of America sometimes.
Yeah, I think he's retired from driving now, but he's going to run up there in Washington District 4.
And we talked with Jonathan Mitchell from Texas 8 just a couple of weeks ago, and Jonathan is running there in Texas, has signed the FAIRtax Pledge. We were really impressed with his strategy for getting out there, a working man's working man, so to speak. We look forward to following that particular district, because I think the way John Gaver is going around, it's very possible that the person that runs and wins, it's very possible that they could have signed the FAIRtax Pledge.
Indeed. We really need to scoot through these last 4 really fast, or time's getting away from us. Marissa Selvig, of course, in Wyoming. We mentioned her, the first candidate in the country to do so. She's running to unseat Liz Cheney. And
Mike Saliba, we'll be talking with him here in just a few minutes.
Reuben Young, also Florida District 23. He's running to unseat Debbie Wasserman Schultz down there in South Florida. He is signed. We talked to him at the Las Vegas Candidate Forum.
And Willie Montague signed back in April from Florida District 10.
All right.
Signed the FAIRtax Pledge.
So that's all the candidates that have signed the FAIRtax Pledge. We'd like to add as many more as we can. If you can take your candidate pledge, your local candidates a pledge and get them to sign it, we'd certainly like to feature them here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But then again, I say our time's getting to go. We need to get right into this interview with Mike Saliba. So let's just go ahead and roll that right here.
It's campaign season, and a lot of people are out making their issues known, the things that they're campaigning on. One of those is Mike Saliba, who's running for Congress up in Clinton Township, northern suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, District number 9. Hey, thanks for being with us, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Big fan.
And we appreciate that too. We love the show. Of course, we just lost one of the original members of the FAIRtax guys, Ron Malero, passed not too long ago. I came on board to hopefully fill in part of the shoes that he left. But we appreciate you being with us here today as we talk about the FAIRtax. And one of the biggest things about talking to folks who are running for Congress is the excitement that they have. They see it as an important part of the effort that they have in front of them to make it to Congress and then make a difference. So tell me a little bit about your experience, Mike, with the FAIRtax. How did you come to know about what this particular tax on consumption can do, and what it means to you in your district, and how do you think folks in your district are reacting to it? So start off, tell me, how did you find out about the FAIRtax first go around?
I think I first found out about the FAIRtax in about 2009. I would actually have to look it up. It was on the Coast to Coast AM radio show. They had a guest on talking about the FAIRtax. And I was already a member of the Libertarian Party at that point, and our plan was just get rid of the income tax and replace it with nothing. I didn't like the FAIRtax at first, but the more and more it stayed in my head of not just getting rid of the income tax, but getting rid of the payroll tax, the corporate tax, everything else that goes with it, and simplifying everything, and especially just getting rid of the IRS and the power that they have to probe into our lives and our business, it really reduces the size and scope of government. And already having Republican and Democrat co-sponsors over the years makes it, I think, a much easier way to become a tripartisan bill that can really excite any voter. And I think, especially here in Michigan, where we've had our ups and downs, especially with manufacturing, I think the FAIRtax turns the United States back into sort of better than China for manufacturing and better than Switzerland for keeping your wealth. So
absolutely,
I think it's a win-win.
I was going to ask you, being there near Detroit, you have a lot of folks that are in the automobile manufacturing business. And like you said, ups and downs. How do you see when you talk to people that you go out on your campaign trail? How do people react when you tell them about the fair tax and the fact that they are going to be able to keep their entire paycheck free of federal taxation? What do they say when you tell them that particular truth about the fair tax?
First, they don't quite even get it. I mean, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around because you've already been getting money taken out of your paycheck for your entire life. They almost dismiss it at first. They think it's not going to work. I'm like, nope, it's revenue neutral. They're like, well, then I'm going to have to pay so much for my goods and services. Like, well, there's a prebate and you're already paying all the embedded corporate taxes, payroll taxes. You're paying compliance. You're already paying a ton of taxes. I have a lot of people who just like, oh, we just need to raise taxes on corporations. Like, no, that's raising taxes on you. And you buy things from the corporations.
That's the fallacy in a lot of the rhetoric that you hear on both sides of the aisles in some cases. But again, the fact that the fair tax is apolitical. It's not. We're not talking about how much money is going to be raised for the Treasury to operate the country. We're just talking about changing the method of taxation from taxing income to taxing consumption, which definitely puts you, me, and everybody else in the driver's seat as far as how much we pay. We get to decide when we're going to pay taxes and actually how much, depending on, and the fact that we're able to save tax-free at the federal level always is a winner when you talk to somebody. Really, you're not going to charge, my Social Security account, all of that goes away. With the fair tax on your Facebook page. And we don't, the way the Americans for Fair Taxation organization is set up, we don't endorse any candidates, but we want to let people know about who they are so we can educate people about you and where you are and what you're doing, and maybe encourage other people in other areas of the country to say, hey, Mike Saliba can get in there and do it in District 9 in Michigan. Maybe I can do it where I'm at. What's the word? And where did you how did you get involved in running for office? What triggered you to get involved? Not only this go round, but maybe a few years ago. You've been at it for a while, and sometimes it takes a few tries, doesn't it?
Yeah. I've kind of been all over the map. I first started going door to door for the Libertarian Party for the 2000 election. When I was 16 years old, I couldn't even vote yet, but I was going door to door for them. I stayed on board with them, but it's harder to be a member of a third party. And then in 2008, when Ron Paul, who had already been the 1988 presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, was making his run in the Republican primary, I thought about going back to the Republican Party for a while too. I thought about even newer, different parties. All in all, I think the Libertarian Party, once I settled on that, it's too difficult to really make any changes in the old parties, at least the kind that I want to make, like the fair tax. And the Libertarian Party really just needed help. I went to the 2014 election, and there were some empty places on the ballot, and it was really just, we need people to fill those places. And that's how I got involved.
What do you do on a daily basis?
If I could actually read really quick,
That's
just for everybody, what it says in the Libertarian Party platform regarding taxations, it says, all persons are entitled to keep the fruits of their labor. We call for the repeal of the income tax, the abolishment of the Internal Revenue Service, and all federal programs and services not required under the U.S. Constitution. We oppose any legal requirements for forcing employers to serve as tax collectors. We support any initiative to reduce or abolish any tax. We oppose any increase on any tax for any reason. To the extent possible, we advocate that all public services be funded in a voluntary manner. And I think the fair tax ticks so many of those boxes. And it's much more voluntary than what we have now. I mean, really voluntary would be if I went to the cash register and they asked me if I want to pay the fair tax, but
That's right.
I can already choose to buy used and, perform my own services. So I can voluntarily opt out of the fair tax much easier than I can voluntarily opt out of the income tax.
And it makes sense. I mean, and if, not to get into the political mainstream conversation that's going on in our country right now over more spending and kind of digging deeper into the ability to find out how much we're actually putting into our bank accounts and taking out. Those things are serious issues that the FAIRtax obviously removes the possibility of that happening. It's going to be a tough ship to turn when you get into office. You get into office. What kind of headwinds are you thinking that you might expect from the people that are already there?
I mean, my main thing is there's already a lot of Republican co-signers. I don't know of any current Democrat co-signers, but I know there have been some in the past. But I just know there is a way to speak to each member of the old parties too. And there is something to like about the FAIRtax for everybody to make this a tripartisan bill. I think, we don't think about somebody like AOC as being on our side, but I think if I got into a room with her for 45 minutes, I could convince her to co-sign the FAIRtax too.
One of the conversations that we have crops up into our programs more often than not here lately is imagine if you're sitting there and this sort of is the apolitical part of it, because quite frankly, I think that once the folks that like the possibility of a government that provides services for a lot of people, they look at what the potential income change is, that you would end up with more money over time to play into people's desire to provide services to their constituents or even to folks that aren't even members of citizens within the country. Because the FAIRtax will move the taxation from folks that earn incomes to everybody that walks into a cash register and buys something or a service that they're paying for. Cash economy comes in, undocumented workers, travelers that come from overseas into our country become a part of the cash flow for our revenue stream. And I think the fact that we would be a tax haven in the world, that income investment would explode as well. And that's it's an educational process. And I know you know it is when who's the toughest person, and you don't have to mention their name, but somebody that you've talked to here in the last month or so, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so, what's the toughest person you've talked to about the FAIRtax, and what did you have to say to convince them that this is a good thing for them as well?
Yeah, I think it's a lot tougher to talk to anybody who's on the left, and now they have this mentality of tax the rich, tax the rich. I believe in equal protection under the law, but the FAIRtax is equal protection under the law that, yes, guess what? That guy who bought a $600,000 Rolls-Royce Phantom is going to pay a lot more in taxes than somebody who just bought a used Prius. In fact, the guy who buys the used car,
or has a bicycle,
or shops at the thrift store, the people you're trying to look after, they're going to be protected by this. And it's important. I think when people on the left more hear about something that's going to eliminate taxes, they see things going away. I'm like, actually, if you want to save Social Security, I'd like privatize Social Security, but I know they want to save Social Security. Guess what? The FAIRtax does it. Or you want government funded colleges? Well, I can't help you there, but you know what I can do? I can drastically reduce the price of tuition by passing the FAIRtax.
And it makes the revenue stream, you're starting to fish from a larger pool, I guess would be a decent analogy for that. You're bringing into the tax revenue stream people that aren't normally considered. Plus a gentleman that I interviewed not too long ago said, think about this, because folks are always saying, well, I guess you're going to, if you have to change the, how much money is spent by our elected officials. Well, actually, it's not part of what the fair tax is all about. We're just changing the method of taxation from income to consumption. But the fella said, look, you're also going to remove the Internal Revenue Service budget from the federal budget. You're going to remove their dollars that they use to operate and hire and all the infrastructure that's there to support that operation is instantly gone just like that. And I'm going, he's right. Even without having to go into all of the debate over appropriations and who needs to get what, where, and, the whole political debate about what to do with all this money. The Internal Revenue Service budget is now non-existent. That money goes back. It could be used for something else, but the debate is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the day after the fair tax gets passed, enacted, and is in operation. It's going to be interesting to see how our elected officials handle what are they going to do with all this money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a terrific way to, the fact that it's revenue neutral means we can still sell it to all the Congress critters that want to keep the money they have. And they're the ones holding the reins. So we got to give them something. But at the same time, it drastically reduces the government's power to interfere in my life, to audit me, to look at my bank accounts, to make it harder for me to open a business. So we've reduced the size and scope of government, but still remained revenue neutral for those who are in power. And we kind of have to be sucking up to right now if we want to get this thing passed.
In all due respect, that's true. And maybe once they see you and everybody else that's out here talking about the fair tax, that's as you are on the ground in your area. There are other people like myself, Bob Paxton, all the folks that are part of the FAIRtax organization as a volunteer, wherever they might happen to be in these great United States of America. We can see that there is progress being made. And because of all the dust being kicked up in Washington, I think that more people are going, hey, you know what, this might not be a bad idea. Politicians typically will follow the folks that they are, their constituents. If their constituents get out there and say, hey, we want this, it only takes a few phone calls for them to go, wait a minute, this is starting to be a trend. I need to see what's going on. So what you're doing, Mike, where you are, and what all the other candidates are doing across America where they are, and the volunteers that understand the fair tax and are articulating it throughout their daily conversations with friends and associates, we can see that is going to be a positive. We know that that's going to be a positive. We wish you all the best there in your district as we get ready to go through the cycle. We appreciate you signing the pledge. And I hope that folks who have watched our interview today understand a little more, have been educated a little more about Mike Saliba and your stance. And thank you for being with us. I'll give you the final word. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Actually, the one thing I want to do is, if you haven't before this necessarily been aware of the Libertarian Party, just go online and search for the world's smallest political quiz. And that will take you through to see where you fit on the political spectrum that we use. And the other great thing that Bob's been saying since he's come on the show is call 5 people and talk to them about the fair tax. But I was speaking to a former congressman. He told me if I got 5 phone calls about a particular issue, I knew it was important. And most of my colleagues thought it was important. So take it a step further, find 5 people to call your congressman right now and ask them to co-sign the fair tax.
Yes, exactly. And we do that, the folks that we talk about, and one of the representatives for me here in North Carolina, who is not my representative now due to redistricting, supported and still co-sponsors the fair tax where she is. And I'll give a shout out to Virginia Fox. Thank you for continuing to support the fair tax. And Mike, we wish you all the best. Mike Saliba is running for Congress in District 9 up in Michigan, just in the northern suburb of Detroit. And do you get to test drive any cars? I didn't ask you what you did for a living, but do you get to test drive any cars for some of the manufacturers up there?
I get to test drive any cars for some of the manufacturers up there?
Do you get to test drive any cars for some of the manufacturers up there? I didn't ask you what you did for a living, but do you get to test drive any cars for some of the manufacturers up there?
I never have, but I know people who does. I have a friend, Danny, who gets to test drive the new cars every once in a while, and we take them out and
Does he come by and pick you
show
up?
them off.
Carry
Yeah,
you around?
I used to see the new Corvette before anybody saw it. It was all covered in camouflage on my way to work on a daily basis when they were test driving it.
Wow. And you wait for the wind to blow up the camouflage so you can see underneath it. And everything.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank you for being with us. Mike Saliba, he's running for Congress up in Detroit, Northern Suburbs, District 9. And we appreciate you being with us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bob. It was great.
All right. I'm impressed, especially the part where he holds his watch up and says, "Hey, you see what it is? Oh, I don't have a watch either, but he's going to be selling watches on the FAIRtax marketplace."
That was a conversation we had right after we stopped the recording, and he is definitely involved in getting his product on the FAIRtaxMarketplace.com, which is growing by leaps and bounds every day. And we'll do a pitch on the FAIRtax Marketplace in just a little bit. Being up there in the northern suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, Mike Saliba understands the value of hard work and also the benefits of the FAIRtax within the working class there in Michigan.
Well, I noted, of course, he was a libertarian, and the FAIRtax has been up in Washington for over 20 years. Neither the Republicans nor the Democrats seem to want to have much of anything to do with it. The establishment on both sides of the aisle just don't want to touch it. So it may take a third party like Saliba's running for to get this into the conversation.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. We're excited about all these folks that have signed. And if you're watching and you know someone in your area that's running, we would advise you to go to fairtax.org and navigate through to the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge, print out a few copies, and go to some of the meetings that you'll be having here in the next election cycle, and let your candidates know this is something that's important for them to check out.
Absolutely. And when you consider what the current administration is wanting to do with the IRS, I mean, really drastically increase their budget, hire more agents to do more audits, i.e. harass innocent taxpayers more so than anything else. And then, of course, they want to be snooping in your bank account to find out whatever you're doing under the guise of catching tax cheaters. But if there was ever a reason to get rid of the IRS, those are it. And hopefully that message will catch on. And
absolutely.
You got about 10 seconds left here.
Go along, everybody. FAIRtaxMarketplace.org.com. FAIRtax.org.
All right, there we go. Well, I appreciate it. You can write us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com if you have a question or comment. And that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Time flies when you're having fun. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys, again, reminding you that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less.
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may. Under the FAIRtax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.